UMEME's story is firmly nestled in Uganda's electricity sector that dates back to the early 90s. The sector continued with its challenges of load generation at 400 megawatts and a paltry 180,000 customers on the grid by 2001. After decades of a decline in electricity sector services and the need to power industrial revival and the growing population, government launched the first generation reforms of 1999. The reforms included allowing private sector participation and unbundling of UEB, which was then responsible for generation, transmission and distribution, resulting into the creation of the Electricity Regulatory Authority.
And in 2000, the regulator was established and started performing their role, their oversight role.
The reforms also saw government go ahead to invite private sector companies to participate and manage assets in the electricity supply chain, on top of adopting a single buyer model of UETCL, making the company the sole importer and exporter of electricity in Uganda. With the Ministry of Energy under Engineer Irene Muloni and John Patrick Amama Mbabazi as the Attorney General, the UMEME concession was signed in May 2005, giving UMEME a license for electricity distribution in Uganda. The concession, signed by Uganda, had several clauses that include, among others, a 20% return on UMEME's private capital investment, interest payment to UMEME Limited on any outstanding portion at a rate of 10% per year for the period of 30 to 45 days after the end of the natural term, 15% for 46 to 90 days, and 20% for any period beyond 91 days until full payment is done. Louis Namwanja Chizito, a commercial lawyer, opens up on why the terms of this concession were this aggressive.
One of its biggest investors was a British private equity company called Actis. This story is long forgotten, but Actis was the biggest investor in UMEME. It had about 45–50% shares, which it kept selling off as the company did an IPO on the stock exchange. So the contracts that UMEME entered into, even as a corporate entity, because got financing from international capital markets, which you call private equity funds. And private equity funds are very aggressive business entities.
In 2018, President Museveni called the 20% return excessive and sought for a revision or termination. However, punitive exit clauses prevented this action.
They went behind and then brought to something called UMEME. UMEME, what is this for? A private company looking for profits? You make it a middleman between the generation of electricity and the final consumers, including the factories, your factories which you want to create jobs. What's this? What are you looking for?
By just this statement alone, renewal of its concession was highly doubtable. However, government did not plan for the buyout amount in advance, nor did it seek for alternative sources. As time was running out, the Minister of Finance sought to borrow about 700 billion shillings from Stanbic Bank, with stringent terms including arrangement fees of 8 billion shillings.
Now, anybody lending you money knows you are handicapped and hard-pressed because UMEME is leaving and you must pay them. And your agreement has provision that make it even more complex, that if you don't pay within the first 45 days, 10% of 190, that's $19 million. If you don't pay within 90 days, it becomes 15. Beyond that, it keeps moving.
Debates have been raging in the elite and political class, with suggestions that the UEDCL, the successor company, would have floated shares on the Uganda Stock Exchange as a means to raise money, an avenue that has not been explored.
Our business reporter Hakim Wampamba has been on this story. Hakim, thanks for joining us tonight. My question is, if the deal was bad right from the start, why was government stuck with UMEME for 20 years? Why did it have to wait?
Well, look, this country has a long checkered history of expropriation of private capital by the government, and that is between 1972 and 1979. So you do not want that history to return haunting the country, because you will make the country highly unattractive for foreign investors to invest in it.